I grew up in a political family and as such moved around probably roughly every 2 years. So I grew up in Chile, in Lesotho, which is in Africa, in the Dominican Republic, Argentina, and then my teenage years in Rome, Italy. Um, my Italian side of the family, my uncle in particular, was my handler pretty much since birth. My mother, I believe, was actually programmed to do this. No matter where we were living, we went to Rome every summer holiday and every winter holiday. So he also visited most of the countries where I lived at different periods to do different rituals and such. My earliest memory is a ritual that he did when I was in a crib. That I remember the bars of the crib. That was designed to break attachment between me and my mother. It involved things like loud sounds, strobing lights, my mother tied in a chair, um, uh, me being swung around upside down by my foot. And my mother, clearly to me, now that I look back, was the victim of, mind control and abuse and all of that. And she was very sexualized as well. And so she was already kind of hanging by a thread, but I think these extra this extra torment resulted in her basically, she had alters. So she would either be very, very depressed. And so as a baby, I would experience, crying for a long time and her not coming, or she was very angry and very violent, which continued throughout my lifetime. So she was also a perpetrator. She was it was inconsistent. So sometimes she would seem to be okay. Sometimes she would go into a very violent alter. So I learned very quickly to have a strong kind of read of her to see which mommy it would be and whether I was in danger or not. Um, just based on the way that she was, I became, this is pretty common, I became her mother at a very young age. Um, and another early ritual that I remember it was when I was living in Chile, so I was about 2 years old, and my uncle had come there. And he had probably just had use of a small church, a small Catholic church, and he had my mother and some of her siblings in the pews, and he did a ritual with me. There was a priest, I remember, and him on the altar, and they took a metal cross and heated it up, and they laid it on my chest so that it sort of burned into my flesh. And there was some ritual, tying me to Satan and all this stuff. And then I was put into a little coffin and left in that church on that altar overnight. And so I say this also to show you that my mother was always involved in my torture. Sometimes she was tortured with me. So she was really also a victim. And as a mother myself, I cannot imagine the horror and the helplessness that she must have felt with her daughter being, also taken from her and trafficked, and also, she was a perpetrator, but like we both know, she was also a victim. So it was, those are some of the earlier memories. And then I'll let you ask me more about the facility I was taken to in Rome and the Vatican and all that. But those are sort of an example of some of the earlier memories. This is all cult-backed information. Attachment is the single most important thing for a human being. They did these horrific experiments in psychology where they took baby monkeys away from the mother and they put them in an enclosure, and they gave them a choice of a wire mesh mother figure with a bottle with milk and a wire mesh mother figure with a terry cloth covering. And the baby monkeys would starve to death and die, but cling to the comfort pseudo-mother. So they know this, and this is hence why hospital births are part of actually global MKUltra. if you look at all the TV shows and if you look at hospitals, all the babies are in the little bassinets in the room alone, and they're not with the parents. Like, they take them and they put them there. They tried to do this with me when I had my daughter in 2003, so they're still trying to do this recently, and I refused. I insisted on keeping her on my body. So they know that attachment is vital to a person's formation, and so they did it with me, but they do it with all of society. And part of that breaking attachment would be, for example, this getting mothers to go work. So now mothers will have a baby, and 6 weeks later they'll go back to work. There's a severing of attachment there. There's all kinds of layers in modern society, and then this cry it out. Sorry, but right. This is actually extremely harmful. And the idea is, oh, well, you have to make your baby independent. Well, the way you make a human being independent is you fulfill all their needs as they need them. So a baby needs to have physical contact, needs to be tended to whenever they're upset, needs to be fed, needs to be loved, needs to have that eye contact and that bonding. And if you raise a child that way, they actually internalize all of that good structure and love, and then they become independent, autonomous, balanced human beings. And so the reason we see, frankly, so many adults in the world that have tantrums and behave like 2-year-olds is because they didn't get those needs met. So this is a really significant part of what the cult does, because it's a great foundation to mind control, both an individual or the collective of humanity. And so then the military and psychiatry became involved, around World War II. Like you say, Mengele, that's how I say his name. I don't know how it's really pronounced. So there were, and then when he was brought over to America, then his work then and prior work, like you say, informed the whole MKUltra. So mind control has been practiced for, like you say, thousands of years. Absolutely. And it just has become more enhanced with psychiatry and with, in recent decades with technology. So it's even more deeper and well orchestrated today than it ever was. But you're absolutely right about that. And you are, I believe, in the UK. So if people want to research, some of your audience is there, is the Tavistock Institute. This institute was created to mind control, and in fact, in their sort of mission statement, they say that their goal is a one world government, and to get there, they will use future shock, which is basically trauma-based mind control. So things that they have done to us individually and understood and learned, then they applied to the collective. So some collective trauma would be wars, would be poverty and scarcity, which are completely engineered and not natural, would be psyops like 9/11, and I don't know if I can say the plague, if you'll get censored for that, but the recent plague. These are all actually global satanic rituals. So, and this has been, and you can look up Edward Bernays and all these people, they have actually written books on how to mind control the human population. So the things that they did to us and have been doing to children, like you say, for a long time, kind of was the foundation of this. And I always like to point out that what they did to me and my fellow survivor friends, they then learned and they used this trauma-based mind control on the collective. And my dear friend Kathy O'Brien always says that the sexual abuse of a child before the age of 5 is the single most effective tool in mind control, and it then becomes generational. So if you look up epigenetics, you understand that the environment actually affects the genes. And so with sexual abuse, you then you create generational layers of humanity that are extra compliant and extra open to mind control. Being mind controlled in my uncle's underground facility in Rome, which, by the way, connects to the subterranean levels of the Vatican. There were a lot of experiments where it's called trauma bonding. So there's this, they give you something good and it's nice and you kind of attach because attachment is so natural and necessary. So all children must attach, whether it's to an abusive parent or not, they have to survive. So they use that knowledge. And then, so they bring you in with love bombing and attachment and then smash, So as an example, one Easter, I was given a little cute yellow baby chick. And I am very, I guess what you would say I'm an empath. So I always had telepathic communication with animals and also with nature. And so and being so starved with love, but it's just naturally who I am too. So I loved this little baby chick. So that was allowed to get me to love it, to need it, to bond with it. And then a big kind of granite paperweight was taken and right in front of me smashed with my hand on it, with my uncle's hand over mine and smashing that baby chick to death right in front of me. So this is part of the training. Also, in that facility, being put in isolation in cages, I would actually make friends with the rats that would show up at night, to have some connection, and being starved for days. So they'll take away and then they'll bring you the food or take you out of the cage and you experience. So it's to create a bond to the perpetrator, which normally, if you're always abusing someone, then you're going to not trust and you're going to hate the let's say the handler, right? So it's this complicated use of psychology where there's a lot of abuse and then there's some, kind of giving back. And this is, for example, what the Stockholm Syndrome is, right? So it's very, very complex, and that is done to create a need and a loyalty for the perpetrator so that then you can be successfully trained into whatever they want you to, whatever tool they want you to become that's useful to them. Well, first I want to validate what you said about things being underground. There are, and if people want to understand also ley lines, to go look at Rachel Vaughn's work, because they'll build things like the Vatican on specific energetic centers and things like the city of Washington, D.C., et cetera, right? And all of these places will have underground tunnels, facilities. There are underground cities, and very commonly in sort of more significant psychiatric hospitals or medical hospitals, there will be tunnels under there as well. So this is not just in Rome, and what I'm going to describe, I just want to validate that this exists everywhere, and this is how they traffic children. They have basically captives under the ground that breed children for their use. It's a horrific reality that exists under the ground. So I just want to validate that. Yeah, so the subterranean levels, no one would know about. I was taken there, and there was a big special room with a huge marble altar where I witnessed them bringing in babies and toddlers and small children, and they would brutalize them in ways that even a horror movie wouldn't give you an adequate description of. And then to get the adrenaline flowing, of course, for the blood to be adrenalized, and then they would ceremonially cut the child with a special knife, and then the blood would go down and would be collected in these chalices in the corners of the altar. And there would always be people, VIP people in attendance. There would be, basically it was a ritual. And so they would drink the blood. Sometimes they would pluck out the heart and eat it. In general, these people eat human flesh. I have seen babies be cooked and served on platters at these VIP parties that I was taken to. So that's another thing. But yeah, so they do these rituals, and the Vatican, different factions of this global cult have different, I guess you would call them, lineages or, you know, not really bloodline, but sort of like that. And so the Vatican, it's Lucifer. They're Luciferians. They also have a throne to Lucifer down there. If you start to look and you have eyes to see, you will see that Lucifer is actually who they actually worship. And so these sacrifices are to Lucifer. They have a way in these rituals to like bring that Luciferian consciousness into their own souls, into their bodies. It's very dark and very sort of complex. I'm not going to be able to do it justice, really. And I want to say to people who are Catholic or religious in general, okay, I'm not saying that, people do this in a benign way. They want to connect with the divine, with the creator, with the source of life and love and light. The thing about religion is it was a cult creation to separate us from our divinity. So it makes that divine something outside of us rather than something inside of us. And, in the Bible, it's the wrathful God who smites you and is a jealous God and needs you to sacrifice your firstborn. Well, that's not the creator God. That's the dark Lord, okay? So it's mixed in with truth, but there's distortion. And I always like to point out, and I know this is probably going to upset people, but I used to witness this below the Vatican and then be taken to church and, the ritual of communion, where you eat the flesh and drink the blood of Jesus. And, well, this is actually a satanic ritual in disguise. And what they do is when you participate in these rituals, you're giving your energy, and they harvest that energy and they use it. So, see, these creatures is what Rachel calls them, and I love that name. They have severed that connection to the divine. They don't have creativity or life force energy, so they have to use our energy. Indeed, everything that's created on this planet, the hell on earth reality that we live in, is their agenda, but created through us and our energy, often unwittingly. So, I don't want to say that, I don't want to take away from people that they are connecting to the divine and to, let's just call it God. It's a loaded word, but at the same time be aware of the manipulation, because they really, really, one of their big things is they want to disconnect us from our divine connection and our divine selves. Satanism isn't some kind of Hollywood portrayal of it. Satanism is an ideology, it's a way of life. And over decades, they have socially engineered society to be very satanic. So the ego, the me, the survival of the fittest, all of these things are satanic ways of living. So they have successfully, to a large extent, changed us. Like you said earlier, we're love, right? And you see who we really are, for example, when they use their weather technology to flood an area or destroy something or burn it. The human beings around, what do? They come out, they help, they bring supplies, they take people into their homes to live with them who lost their homes. This is the normal human condition. They, of course, have wanted to sever the brain, the mind from the heart. The heart has a magnetic field that is way bigger than the brain does. So we live in a brain-dominated, mind-dominated society, deliberately severing that connection to the heart. They can't really do it successfully, though. We still love, but that is their intent. So we live, and if people think, maybe I sound crazy that we live that we're run by a satanic cult. They're kind of being pretty open with it nowadays. Look at the Olympic Games opening ceremony. Look at that Sam Smith performance for, was it the Grammys or what? I don't pay attention to that stuff, so I don't even know what it's called. Look at music videos. Look at the fact that in the US they now have Satan Club at schools. Look at models going down the runway. What are they wearing? It's in your face today, and this is what one of their goals has been, to create a society where people embrace worshiping Lucifer. And one of their other goals, which they're unfortunately well on their way to achieving, is to normalize pedophilia. So absolutely, they have engineered us into living in a satanic ideology, and we don't even realize it. Yeah, I don't remember with some of the indoor ones, but I remember with the outdoor hunting ones, having some kind of a bracelet on, and it was supposedly a special thing because I was a good girl, so you can wear this nice colored, kind of elastic sort of bracelet. So I remembered in those settings. And with those, in case people don't understand this, it's fun for them. It's a big party. The children are dressed in special things or naked or whatever and sent to hide, and then they are literally hunted, and it's terrifying. And when they find children, they rape them, they cut them to pieces, they torture them. I saw at one of these them take a couple of babies alive, and this is kind of horrific, but impale them on a very, very long sword and then swing the sword around. And they're laughing and they're drinking and they're using drugs, and this is kind of their fun. And at some of the ones indoors that looked like Eyes Wide Shut type stuff to me, it's full of orgies. It's frenetic. It's very satanic. It's truly, these people enjoy this activity, and they enjoy. Um, there were rituals I was taken to, I don't know where, also where like I would be raped on an altar with a cross. So there's all kinds of, pregnant women cut open, babies cooked and served on platters. I mean, you would think this couldn't possibly exist, and you would think that because we're human and we could never, ever hurt an innocent in that way. So that's why people sort of repudiate that. They're like, oh no. But we have to understand these people are psychopaths. They're severed from that kind of norm. They have no empathy. And yeah, so these are the kinds of things that I witnessed that were associated with the Vatican. Sometimes I would be given to certain people for periods of time. Sometimes it was out of like these nice hotel rooms. It kind of varied, yeah, in terms of the trafficking. Yeah, well, there are many, many programs, and I was programmed through many different tortures. So, as a little sidebar, I'll give you an example. My need for, I would see this girl, I think it was not a physical girl, but it was some connection I had. And so, for example, that was exploited. Like, well, you'll get to see the girl and play with the girl if you do this and this and this. And then I was put in this room in the facility, and I saw my uncle and handler go and bring this girl walking down the hall, and this particular room had a ceiling to floor fan, which suddenly came on, just huge. And as he approached the room, he pushed her through the fan so that her body was destroyed and splattered all over me. And that, for example, it's a horrific torture, but it's mind programming for me. And I had to really overcome this, that I had this idea in me that if I got close to any person, if I had any friends, that they would be killed. So that kept me from, until I was probably 17, I didn't dare make any connection with the other kids at school. So in my front life, I went to school, I wore very nice clothing, I had skiing lessons and horseback riding lessons, and went to the country club, and I had nannies, and I went to school in a black chauffeured car. So I had this kind of front life, but I was completely withdrawn and didn't say a word to anyone out of a paralyzing fear that because of me, people will get hurt. So, for example, that's a way that that program was put in, right? Now, to what you're saying with victim consciousness, it's also a program. It's a cult program that they use on all of society. In the last few years, they've really pumped that through with the woke program, where everyone's a victim. It's disempowering because, and this goes along with the savior program. So everyone is going to save us. The people in spaceships are going to come save us. A 2,000-year-old man is going to come back and save us. A former president is going to come back and save us. So if we need to be saved, then we're victims. If we were to be saved, we can be helped to save ourselves, but there's no growth or empowerment happening if you're in a victim consciousness, right? And so unfortunately, I've encountered out there this kind of idea that if you're an SRA survivor, oh, poor you, Max, no, not poor me. I'm strong. I'm a warrior. I'm a spiritual warrior here. Don't poor me. Yes, things happen to me. And there's a stage in recovery where you have to really process that, and you have to know that you were victimized. But you don't want to stay stuck there, because if you're stuck there, you're disempowered and you will not go on to be the full potential that you could be, which the cult wants to keep us all from, because then we're dangerous to them. So to keep everyone as a victim is extremely wrong and disempowering. And part of that is also, I've encountered this idea that you should tiptoe around SRA survivors because, you might trigger them. Okay, you cannot control the outer world. The triggering is going to be a normal thing for us and for everyone, because if you have unhealed wounding in you, then it's kind of like every unhealed wound is like a play button, when you play a video. It's there, it's fine, until someone brushes by and touches it. And then it opens up and activates a reaction. But it's the reaction, 80% of the reaction is about an experience in the past that has been activated inside us. So when people are triggered, that's why they get all reactive and then they make a big mess. They scream at someone. So being triggered, I have used that for my healing, and that's what I teach people. So if you get triggered, go, oops, okay, something got activated in me. It's now my personal responsibility. So if I'm talking with someone and they trigger me, I say, hold on, I need a few minutes, or I need to call you back tomorrow. And then go in and follow that trigger, because it's leading you to a memory. It's leading you to something in you. Feel it. We couldn't feel it when we were children. We had to box it up, compartmentalize it, and put it away because it would have killed us. So feel it, know it. Feel how old you are inside. Like, oh, I'm about 5. Usually some kind of memory will happen. You'll gain an insight on something that you went through. And then you'll realize the mental program, like I just described that girl, what they did. My mental program was, if I'm close to someone and love them, they will be killed. Well, that's not true, but that's that's the mental program that I developed because of that experience. So then you find that mental program and you go, okay, so you talk to that inner child of yours and you help unstick that trauma, and you say, no, that's not true. Loving is good. That was a lie. They did that to you on purpose. And then you put in the true thing, that loving ourselves and others is the way out of all of this. It's actually good. So there's a whole process that happens. And so being triggered, the person outside you or the event outside you isn't the bad guy. It's just a trigger to go in and clean something out. So if we use triggers that way, we evolve ourselves higher and higher. And so I find it disturbing, yes, thank you for mentioning that, when there's a sort of an idea that, oh, you're a victim, oh, can I say this word, or, can I wear this color? I mean, you can't alter the outside world to avoid being triggered. You have to allow that and work with that. And as you do, you will become over time less and less reactive. And that's actually freedom. You're not free when you're always reacting to an external stimuli. That's part of the mind control. When you have a choice what you say or do, that's actual freedom. So anyway, that's how I see it. So there are some people that will follow a certain politician or a certain whatever person out there, believing that they're good because no one has all of the information. Okay, so some people will go and be part of something thinking that they're doing actually good. So for example, there's a lot of stuff about the US military, and there's evil at the top layers, but at the bottom layers, people actually believe they're working for the good and they're following their orders, but they're compartmentalized so they may not know that their order is actually negative for people. It's very complicated. It's not black and white at all. So, and just because a person is, perceived as bad or wrong about something doesn't mean also that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's very, very complex. But mainly, I think what you're saying is, I have seen this as well, and it's disturbing to me. We should all stick together. Actually, all of us who are trying to expose this cult and trying to expose SRA and trying to expose the entire structure and hierarchy of this planet, none of us, we're all going to have blind spots. We're all going to miss something. That's not the point. The point is we should all support each other, because I would say they probably want and have tried and programmed people to go after each other within a certain subgroup because, it's a very effective technique. You silence people, you discredit them, you take them down. Well, let's focus on the real enemy here, because again, divide and conquer is like victim consciousness and the savior program. These are all basically MKUltra programs. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been wrong in some of the things that I believe and thought. We're always evolving and growing, so we're never going to be perfect. And so you never, that's why you can't judge anyone else. It's completely ridiculous, because we're always evolving and growing beings, and we all make mistakes, and then, hopefully we learn from them. But people come through, I came through the New Age program, the feminist program, until I realized how those are programs. And it's a process of growth. Just like you can't be mad at a 2-year-old for not being able to solve a calculus problem, you can't be mad at someone who isn't at a level of consciousness that you're at. They're still getting there. Yeah, and also, naming names, it's good, it has its usefulness, but really there's a lot of other areas to work on, such as one's own inner work, such as, what are you doing? What's our contribution, our mission, so to speak, to help this planet in the spiritual war, to help the light win, helping other people. There's lots of things that we can do that are extra beyond naming names. May be helpful, but there's a whole swath of people that are mind controlled and that wouldn't believe you anyway, And so, for example, I've told people the Q thing is a psyop. It's trust the plan. Someone's going to save you. In other words, it takes people who are awake and who might take some action and sidelines them and parks them over here. So in the same vein, people have said to me, oh no, because they reveal a lot of truth, so they're actually, it must be real. And I say no, because the people that are mind controlled and hear that won't believe it anyway. They'll say it's a conspiracy theory. So naming people is important, but also a large segment of people will not buy it anyway because they're so mind controlled. They will reject anything that contradicts their program. So then maybe there's some good work in exposing things gently, or exposing different facets of the cult to wake people up. So a big thing, I think, is waking people up to the truth, and you start with the truth that's relevant to them. So SRA survivor testimony is for some people, but some people won't listen to that. It's too horrific. They think that doesn't apply to me. So then you have to start where things apply to them. Do you have medical freedom? Are you being forced to take things that you don't want to take? Are you, the economy, like they're raising prices? Like, you have to link real world things that matter to people to the cult and show them how this is all part of the same thing. So there's different audiences for different things, is what I'm saying. And just before I do, I want to validate the Washington, D.C., City of London, and Vatican. So these places are not part of the countries that they're residing within. So, that's important to know. Washington, D.C. is not part of the United States. It's its own, I don't know what to call it, no man's land or separate thing. And they each did have their functions. So Washington, D.C. was the military might, and the City of London was the financial arm. And the Vatican, I mean, loosely, they all played multiple roles. The Vatican was sort of the Holy See. It's the SEE, but it's the SEA, the Sea of Consciousness. So they were responsible for controlling the collective consciousness, souls, mind control. So they each had their interesting little functions. But if you go dig, it will be interesting to find that, so the Vatican is not part of Italy. It's its own. It's its own country, essentially, right? So I just thought I'd mention that. So I said, I'm done. You're not going to do this to me anymore. I'm over it. Also, at the same time, I was always slated to go from my high school in Rome, Italy, to the United States for university, which I ended up doing. So I think on an energetic level, it was me just saying, I'm done. You cannot do this to me anymore. I'm not going to participate. And then 3D situations, which brought me over to the United States. And so it's kind of stepping into my power and just drawing a line. And I think per universal law, which, I have some memories of pre-incarnation, they need to get our consent to do what they do. So they put it out there, like they put out Agenda 2030 in a document, or they tell us these things in movies. They show us what they're going to do. Just recently, the delightful Klaus Schwab said, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, they're telling you what they're about to do. They did a simulation of that plague. They supposedly, blanketed the planet. They explore these things ahead of time. They have simulations. They have written these things out. If you look, you will see disclosure everywhere. Okay, so why is that? Because if we don't say no, it's like, oh well, they're on board with it. So one of the things that's super important, and again goes back to the part that we have control over, is to begin to say no. So if everybody said no, I'm not going to shut down my business, nothing would have happened. See, there's too many of us. It can't be a force thing. It has to be a manipulation and a mind control thing. And I think what people need to wake up to is we don't have, our compliance and consent are furthering the situation. So to circle back to your question, I think that was a huge aspect of it for me. I just got to a point where I said no. And then, circumstances ended up in me leaving and coming to the United States. And then at some point I changed my first and last name, and I did my work, and I freed myself from that cult. And, you mentioned this earlier, I worked in jails and prisons. I ran a program for men who batter. I worked with abused children. I worked with abused women who were trauma survivors and addicts. So I did a lot of trauma work in my 20s and 30s. And that for me was actually part of my healing, because in the facility and in all those places, I was forced to watch horrible things happen, and I had no agency. I was helpless. I couldn't do anything about it. So being able to help people recover, and just having that agency suddenly was something extremely significant and important for me. Yes, I saw some demons invoked into the room below the Vatican. They had red eyes and they were sort of smoky, so it was a smoky form, not fully corporeal. I was sometimes sort of attacked. So a lot of the attacks after I got out and went my own way were in this manner, sort of demonic, energetic. So, for example, there was a time I was going to bed and I was lying, you're sort of about to fall asleep, and suddenly there was this insectoid demonic entity like hovering like right above me, and it made a buzzing noise, and it was horrifically ugly, and it was sort of coming at me with its fangs and everything. And for a moment I was scared, and then I remembered, no, no, no. So I said to it, get the fuck out of my face. I do not consent. You do not have permission to be here. Go. And then it let out this horrifying shriek. It was like, and it like shriveled out of, but I could actually see it, you know. Again, it's not solid matter, but it's definitely visible. I've had a lot of things like when I first spoke out and would tell my story, not only the sort of suicide program that was built into me would be activated, which I had to overcome, but I would be like mentally attacked by demonic entities. So, oh, you shouldn't have said that. Oh, everyone's gonna hate you, and so it's almost like you can hear it's like a gremlin-y tone. It's a frequency. So I've had actually quite a lot of experiences of being attacked in this manner. So I've had to really learn how to uh, stop that. And so yes, I definitely have seen many versions of these entities. Yeah, and I can see them sometimes in people.
Yeah.
So there's certain people like you can feel it and you can sort of see it in them. There's something that's not human in them, and I mean I would say you can see these in some of these more elite type parasite perpetrators out there. People I've actually seen. It's kind of like in the movies where it's the person's human and then there's a little glitch. There's like some thing that, and then you can see I've seen a reptilian looking person under there. It's very momentary. So then it's back and you think, okay, am I crazy? But I know today that I'm not crazy. So I have seen all kinds of things of that nature, yes. These rituals, these dark rituals, when you torment people and then sacrifice them while they're still alive, it energetically, it like tears, it makes a tear. It's like a portal, it's like an opening for these entities to come through. So who was there? I mean, I was there, forced to kind of watch it, but there were all kinds of celebrities, religious figures, uh, agency people, high level people that would participate, and they do these rituals, and this is not something I remember myself directly, but how do I explain it? It's just something I can tell, like your king, your current
I don't have a, but I know what you mean. The king of
well, your
bread.
country's supposed, yeah. Um, these people will, at that level, will do all kinds of ceremonies. They'll sit in special chairs. They'll wear special crowns or hats, and this will be to bring whatever their dark demonic overlord is, whether it's Lucifer or others, into their to their consciousness into their being. So this sounds very kind of out there, but consciousness transfer is possible. There's clones. There's other entities such as reptilians posing as humans. I mean, there's all kinds of varieties of this stuff. No, I say it that we're all billboards. Our past lives, it's like there's a signature, there's a color, there's a frequency, there's all the things that have happened to us. I think actually that's our natural state, but of course that's been dumbed down and mind controlled and engineered out of us. But some of us, we come through and we may come, we may have volunteered to be here to help in this war. And so, we bring these abilities and they can't sort of turn them off in us. And but I would say everyone has that, and no one, we've been trained to not trust it. If you follow that inner voice, that intuition, that knowing, I mean, you can really see, we're all telepathic naturally. Again, that's been dumbed down, so we use language. Well, with language, you can lie. But when you're telepathic, it's not that you hear the person's thoughts, you just receive all of it. You know whether they're being deceptive or not. You know their frequency. It's very clear. So I would encourage everyone watching this to just practice that, to begin to observe yourself when you pick something up about someone. Don't just bat it away, like focus on it, and you'll begin to see that you pick up a lot more than you think. Well, I want to say it's kind of what you said a few minutes ago. Trauma is trauma. If you're born on this planet, you're traumatized. It's a continuum. The SRA could be over here, but it does the same thing. It's very similar. So, and it's really important for us to understand trauma, how we've been traumatized, what it looks like, what the things are that we do because of it, and how to tools and techniques to recover, not just for ourselves, but so that we become immune to the trauma-based mind control used out there on the collective, right? It's very important to, and even this course, this 5-week course, could be for people who have family members that are traumatized or are allies or whatever, just to understand it. I think it's really one of the most important things that we should learn, because we live in a cult trauma, planet. And then the group, similar to what you said, it's for survivors of violence. It can be incest, it can be SRA, it can be domestic violence, it can be any kind of violence, because again, trauma is trauma. And so with group, that one's going to be 12 weeks, and it's going to be it's going to be limited. It's going to be basically group therapy where people are going to learn about trauma, and people learn from each other. It decreases the isolation and the stigma. So those both will be on my website on unbroken.global. The dates and the times will shortly, soon, in probably the next week, be added on there so people can go and sign up. And with the course, there'll be 2 offerings. One for time zones that are USA and Europe friendly, and one for the same class for time zones that will be USA and Australia friendly. Because, we all live in different parts of the world, so there'll be 2 of the same. So depending on where you are, at least you have a pretty good chance of being able to do the time. So yes, at unbroken.global, they will be up soon, and people can sign up.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in our next video.